Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Healing in Hindsight, your no BS source for thriving with diabetes. And on today's episode, I have two very special guests that I'm really excited to just share their knowledge and perspective with. It is Lauren and Ryan from the Dope Shit My Therapist Says podcast. And yeah, they say some definite dope shit, okay? These two ladies are both licensed therapists, and they are actually in two different time zones. One's on the East Coast and one's on the West Coast. So we were all across the map on this one. But I'm really glad to, speak with Lauren and Ryan about their perspectives on mental health, on working with clients with chronic conditions. And I even kind of give a little bit of my advice to them on helping those who are specifically diabetic. So I think this is a powerful conversation. Y'all know I love stuff dealing with mental health and spiritual health on top of our body health. And I feel like both Lauren and Ryan share some great tips and insights on how we can all give ourselves some space. So let's get into it with Lauren and Ryan from Dope Shit My Therapist Says. Let's do it.
Perfect.
You're listening to Healing in Hindsight, your no BS source for thriving with diabetes. What's up, guys? I'm Taylor Danielle, and it's my goal to help millennial diabetics like myself live an amazing life without your diagnosis getting in the way. I get it. I was diagnosed back in 2015 with type 2 diabetes, and it was really hard to find people around my age to understand how to travel, socialize, or even have meaningful relationships. But I feel like with a focus on mindset, perspective, and nutrition, together we can take back our health and our lives. Consider this the red table talk, but for diabetics. Minus the entanglements, though. So let's do it. I am glad that it is Friday. It is Easter weekend. I keep forgetting because people keep saying Happy Easter, and I'm like, oh yeah, because of just the whole traditional aspect of it. I don't really celebrate it, but I have two friends who are Easter babies. One, her birthday's today, and then my other best friend is on Monday. So I remember that. I don't remember the Easter thing, but it's nice. The weather is nice here in Austin. It's not too hot, not too cold, especially after that wonderful freeze that we had a couple of weeks ago. But it's good. It's good. I'm really excited to have you guys both on the show. I have been watching you guys for a minute. I know we met in mutual, podcasting circles, but I've been really enjoying the content that y'all have been pulling out. And so, of course, after the title itself, I was like, I need y'all on the show because mental health is definitely a huge part of living with a chronic illness. And so, Lauren and Ryan, thank you for sharing your time and energy as we go into this. But something that I would like to do is just for those who don't know you guys, if you could each introduce yourself, and then I need y'all to tell the story of how y'all met and how you started the show because we're in three different time zones, y'all. We're literally in three different time zones as we're recording this. And I am just so glad we were able to coordinate this really well. I'm Central, one's Pacific, one's Eastern. So, all across the map. It's really cool. So I got to know how you guys have been making this work. So, yeah.
You want to go first, Lauren?
Sure. Got to clear my throat. Well, my name is Lauren. I live in Los Angeles, California, born and raised in the San Fernando Valley, which is right by LA. If you've been to LA, you know the area. Then my family moved out a little bit, about 45 minutes north when I was like 9 years old. I always loved helping people. That was something I knew I wanted to do as a young girl, just didn't really know what that meant. I had a lot of experience working with children, and then I moved to Arizona. I went to Arizona State for undergrad and studied psychology. And then I taught preschool for a year, trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And I moved back to California, and then that was when I entered my grad program, which was where I met Ryan. And we studied master's in counseling with an emphasis in marriage and family therapy. And that's kind of where my story with Ryan starts.
And I'm Ryan. I now live in Connecticut, but I was born and raised in California. the desert areas where nobody knows we exist. And I went to Cal State Channel Islands out on the coast to get my bachelor's degree in psychology. And I also minored in communications. And I went straight into my master's program, which is also where I met Lauren, and am now a licensed marriage and family therapist practicing out here in Connecticut. And I moved to Connecticut just because I wanted a life change. I am somewhat of a wild nomad at heart, and I've always been caged in. So I finally just decided to make the random move, which people are like, "Why Connecticut?" And I'm like, there's something for everyone, I guess.
Yeah. That's
awesome. And I remember when I met Ryan, we kind of started off on a weird foot. I do remember her saying she wanted to move to New England, and I was like, that's interesting. And then in our second semester of our first year, I was like, no, we have a lot in common. This girl is really cool. And because she lived right by where my parents lived, it was so easy for us to establish a relationship as friends. And then we became travel buddies, adventure buddies, concert buddies. We've done everything together. And then she moved, and it was really hard, but we kept in touch. And then July is when we launched our podcast, and we've been doing it ever since.
Yeah, the podcast actually was an idea that I had once I moved here. It's kind of weird, just in the realms of mental health. My mental health changed completely once I left California for the better. It was like a closed door in my brain had opened up, and everything that I was good at as a child or had at the core of me just became easier. So I had all these creative ideas flooding me. I'd always wanted to do something creative again, but just never knew what it was. And so I remember texting Lauren probably within the first couple months of me living out here in Connecticut and saying, like, I think we should start a podcast about mental health, about being a therapist, something along this line. And now, 3 years later, basically, we finally made it a reality.
Yeah, I think we actually started about the same time. You guys were in July, and I was in August. And of course, COVID made things a lot easier, right? And remote life has given us a whole new meaning of connection. But it's really cool that you guys had this deep relationship beforehand. And Lauren, I totally feel you on like that separation is hard. One of my best friends from college, she first moved to Houston to do her law program, and that was a little bit easier. It's like 2.5 hours from here. And then she moved to Philadelphia to actually do her practice and, work and do what she wants to do. And that was really hard because, we have this trio. And so she and I are still here. And then our third is in Philadelphia. And we're just like, life is weird because you're not here, and I'm used to seeing you guys every weekend, and now I don't. So I truly commend you guys for being able to have such a deep relationship and build something together that surrounds both of your passions on how you met. So that's really cool. So my next question for both of you guys is, so you did your grad programs together. Why therapy? Why was that the idea that especially family and marriages, that's, a very particular realm to go in. So what inspired each of you to decide, I want to be a therapist and I want to help people?
Okay, I'll go first.
Okay, I guess I'll go first.
Wait.
Oh,
go ahead, Lauren.
Let's start flipping a coin. I choose Ryan.
Okay. Normally we don't have this problem. Normally we're very we haven't recorded in a while. I feel like that's why. So I actually wanted to go into a completely different field. I went into college wanting to be in public relations, wanted to be in a creative outlet, and couldn't get any of my classes. Like they were all full all the time. And so I was like, I'm not just going to sit here. I need to be doing something. So I started taking psychology classes, and I finished all of my psychology classes by the time my communication classes started opening up, which is why I have a minor in communications, because I was like, nah, I'm not staying here any longer. I'm done. And then I don't know, I just ended up going to my master's program. My mom is a marriage and family therapist, so I grew up around psychology and therapy in my household. So I guess it was just kind of ingrained in me that way. I've always been a listener, a helper, That's just kind of my personality. If you take the personality test, all of mine come back as the helper, and I'm just like, okay, let me get something new in
Yeah.
here. But to kind of like clarify for most people, the common misconception is that marriage and family therapists are counselors for couples and families, and that's actually
Mm.
not necessarily true. It's just kind of the title. We have a broad range of training in things that are clinical, so mental health, and our degree helps us look at behavior from a systemic standpoint, meaning like your family
Mm.
is the system that you grow up in, and that just impacts everything, how we see the world and how we act and all of that. So a lot of people are like, oh, you do couples counseling. I'm like, no, neither of us do couples counseling, actually. It's just the way that
Wow.
our degree is called. But yeah, all right, your turn, Lauren.
All right. And then for me, it's funny because when I was like 13, 12, 13, I was always reading those like teen um, fiction, nonfiction novels about eating disorders and just other like mental health issues. And, looking back, it's like, well, it makes sense. I wanted to be in a helping field. But it's really, I think the reason I wanted to be a therapist was because when I was in middle school, I was bullied and it really impacted how I felt during that time. And the only way I got through it was because my family was so in tune to how I was feeling. And currently, I'm almost done with my job. It's coming to an end for me as I enter the licensure process of actually getting my license and being licensed in California. I've been working at a high school. So working with teens has been extremely rewarding. So I think that I just wanted to figure out, I think for a while I wanted to be a child psychologist because the title sound good. And then I found the MFT program. And just like Ryan said, I mean, it's
Mm.
not, it is just a title. A lot of the US works on social work. Like that's like the main therapy in other states that are not
Mm.
really California. So California has psychologists, social workers, and to me, I just thought my grandma, who I never met, who passed away when my dad was a child, was a social worker in New York, and I knew what she did, and I was like, I don't want to do that. So what else can I
Mm,
do? Now I realize we're all kind of the
right.
same, a little bit different depending on the state and the job itself, but and also the grad school that we went to was where I was born and raised for half my life. So I was like, it's meant to be. It works out. So, yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool, and, definitely, Ryan, thank you for clarifying the title thing because, I'm guilty. I'm like, "Okay, it's family issues, it's marriage issues," and, that's already a deep well in itself, let alone what, possible individual stuff is, but it's nice to know, for those listening that it means you can cover a lot of things, and it's the titling is more so the root of where some of those individual issues come up, so that's really cool. For my own therapist, she's got 50 million tags on her and she's a supervisor. So I'm like, I'm just going to assume that means you know all the things and I'm in the right place because, it can be a little bit confusing when you're, especially seeking help and you're trying to understand what does that mean that you specialize in. So thank you for that clarity. That's really cool. Which leads me, and Lauren, I'll start with you on this one, is what is one misconception about therapy that you want to correct? So we got the title thing, but as you go into therapy or someone's seeking it out for the first time, I'd love to hear from both of you. What's one myth or thing that you're just like, hey, stop the madness. This is not true. If you come into a therapy space, this is actually what happens.
So there's probably more than one, but I will say the one that comes to mind is that you need to be in a mental health crisis to get therapy, when in reality, mental health should be looked at from a preventative perspective, which is another reason why I wanted to go into
Mm.
therapy was I wanted it to be preventative because so many things in our life are like, well, we're in it now, how do we get out? And that also relates to physical health as well. Like, if you see something on your body, go to the doctor now, not in 3 weeks when it's infected. So I think about that in a mental health way that for me, it's
Yeah.
like if you're not feeling okay or supported or mentally well, go find a therapist now because you can always end therapy. You can always leave. You can always find someone new. You can have a short term thing. It could be 6 months, and you're like, you know what? I feel better. We worked through the challenge that brought me here. Or it could be long term, but it doesn't need to be something that, like, oh, wow, I'm in a deep depression. I've been like this for years. Now I need therapy. It's like, no, you need therapy before. So that's probably what I would say.
Ooh, that's a good one. All right, Ryan, what about you?
I think mine would probably be that I've noticed a lot of clients come into therapy thinking that there are these tools, that word gets used a lot, that I'm magically going to give them that will make things better. Like I just hand them a
Mm,
magic wand and then all of a sudden like they use that wand when they need to and it works. Um, and although we do utilize tools in therapy, they're kind of a little bit more covert than people will think when they come into therapy. You know, they can be something so small, like us just talking about something and then them building insight on being able to think about those things, or us using mindfulness or journaling or breath work. Those are all skills and tools, and they don't always work. So I think that's a big misconception, is that you're going to learn how to cope with things in therapy and it's always going to work. Like it's going to be your toolbox that always works. And so, um, I kind of remind clients there's times where you just have to utilize time as a coping skill, or talking,
yeah.
or just having a space to vent is a big tool, and that people don't even think about. They're like, well, we're just talking. Why, this isn't doing anything. I'm like, well, you're really learning about yourself by being able to vocalize these things. So I think that's a big one. We're not going to just hand you these magic wands that are going to fix everything. You have to do the work.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's something so huge in our culture that I feel like we're finally coming around to, in that nothing is going to be instant. I think we're all around the same age, so we grew up in the microwave generation, as they like to call us, right? So everything is instant. Everything is, it should be fixed right now. And no matter what it is, whether it is your mental health, your physical health, your spiritual health, it takes time. I don't wake up the next day and suddenly like, oh, my blood sugars are just absolutely perfect. No, I had to work at this shit, and it's still a daily grind, right? I appreciate that, you know, listen to the therapist, y'all. It takes time. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. And that's something that I had to get over, because I did not want to go back to therapy. I had a weird experience when I was a kid with my parents. Um, but thanks to my partner pushing me, I didn't even realize, like, I like to share anyways. I'm an oversharer. But when I got into that container, it just fell out of me. Like everything just fell out of me. And it was just like, that's all I needed half the time, was someone who wasn't emotionally attached to me to sit back and just hear me out. And I'm like, yeah, I can do this every week, And so I think that's very beautiful to understand that it is not going to be an instant, in one session. It is something that you need to work at and be willing to work at. Because if you're looking for a magic wand, we all want to be in Harry Potter world.
Oh, yeah.
It ain't happening. So I would love to dive into a couple of things that, I feel are not only huge just in general, but especially for the diabetic community, something that always plays a role in, how our illness progresses is stress. So I don't know if y'all heard it going off. So I have my CGM right here to check in on where my blood sugar levels are at, right? And so something that affects blood sugar levels is stress. And it's not something that we can, 100% control. But a lot of times when you're diagnosed, people don't tell you, hey, stress might make your numbers go crazy. Working out in certain ways might make your numbers go crazy. Ladies, time of the month is going to make your numbers go crazy. Being sick, nobody really breaks that down. And so I would love to, one, hear from each of you why stress management is important, and how does it take a toll if it goes unchecked. For us, we get, if it goes unchecked, your numbers are going crazy. But I think there's a deeper thing that can happen if you don't take care of your stress management. So, Ryan, we'll start with you on this one.
Okay. So I talk to my students about this a lot because I've been hearing from a lot of people. I also work at a high school. I don't think I said that. That they're just really struggling to focus. They're really struggling with memory and all of these things. And this is something I actually learned when we were in our master's program, because it happened to me, is that if your stress level gets out of control, your frontal lobe, the front of your head where your forehead is, where your all of your decision making, focus, etc. comes from, will pretty much shut off. It's like done. It's like, I'm tired, I'm not working anymore. And that's a big thing, because then you're more stressed out. Like, why can't I remember what I just was supposed to be doing? Why can't I focus on this or that? So stress can have a huge biological impact on us, like you're saying, Taylor, for your blood sugar levels. And, for other people, they're getting stomach aches and migraines. And I mean, stress can even give you a heart attack if it goes unchecked. So the mind body connection is so intense that we really have to learn how to recognize when we're getting to that place and really find ways to stop it and make conscious decisions to make changes for ourselves.
Wow. Wow. What's your take, Lauren?
Well, I agree, first of all. Um, but also, I feel like a lot of people are just not honest about where their stress is coming from. I'm one of those people because,
Mm,
full disclosure, so I have a migraine today. It's because I had a really stressful week. And I know exactly why. I
mm,
just dealing with some personal stuff, some career stuff, and I feel like it's really important that people are honest about where their stress is coming from and being able to confide in somebody as a release, whether that is your therapist who can help you work through some of those issues, or a partner, close friend, whoever it may be, because the body really does pick up on the stress. And from a mental health perspective, I mean, there's certain things that I talk about also with my students that are not, anxiety, depression. It's fatigue and also digestion, like Ryan said, sleep issues.
yeah.
Insomnia is, due to stress. So when I'm hearing, oh, I'm not sleeping well and there's a lot on my mind, I mean, that it's stress. So finding out the cause of it and then addressing it.
Wow. So first, Lauren, thank you for being, vulnerable. I know that this is kind of y'all's space on a regular basis, but I think people often forget that the people helping others also need space to be vulnerable and to release. So thank you for being open with us, and I hope the migraine gets a little bit better for you. Because like you guys said, everybody needs to recognize and acknowledge their stress. Everybody needs release. And I'm also guilty of not recognizing when I'm stressed the hell out. It literally crept up on me. In season 2, I actually had to take a step back from the show for like 2 weeks because I translate uh doing things by keep myself busy. If I'm stressed out, if I keep myself busy, if I'm constantly working on something, I love projects anyways, then I won't have to acknowledge that something is freaking me out, right? I'll just deal with it later when I get all this stuff done. This is more important. And my body literally shut down. Was just like, you are not going to have the energy to move at all until you address this. So either address it or you just going to be laid out in the bed for, a week straight. And so it is definitely important to check into that, especially for those with chronic illnesses. It can cause way more harm if you don't. So, speaking of clients with chronic conditions, um, have either of you worked with students or other people who have a chronic condition like diabetes or some other autoimmune disease? And if you have, what's been the most challenging about it? And what are some tips that you would give somebody, like myself or any others who not only have this condition, but they're trying to get their mental health in check as well, in ways that they can, balance that stress management to keep the symptoms and things from kind of flaring up? And Lauren, we'll start with you
Okay.
on this one.
So I have a student who's newly diagnosed type 1 diabetic, and they're having a really hard time. So hard of a time that literally yesterday I
Mhm.
got an email from the nurse at school talking about this is a really big issue. Now, without going into
Wow.
details, my student hasn't been super vocal about it, and because it's something I'm not super familiar with, I'm not pushing it. I'm not pushing for them to talk about it, but I'm aware of it, and I
Mhm.
know from you know Taylor, from other people out there who live with a chronic condition that I mean, it's a very debilitating thing, and it's hard, but also working with chronic
Mhm.
conditions, depending on the chronic conditions, is hard as a therapist when I don't know what it's like. So all I can do is empathize, which it's true for a lot of things, but I feel like that's a great time for them to be in a support group or have a therapist who is
Mhm.
capable, dealing with someone. I know there's a lot of support groups for people who have cancer or family members who someone has cancer. So they have a lot of those types of support groups, which are really important. But
Mhm.
it's hard to say as far as working with chronic conditions because I'm very new to it with my one student. Um, and
Yeah.
mental health, I mean, we've worked with a bunch of different students who are dealing with heavy mental health issues. Chronic conditions, all I could say is, I work with my dad who has Crohn's disease. So he's kind of like my model
Mhm.
for working with someone with a chronic condition and seeing how their life is disrupted. It's really, really hard. I definitely have a lot of empathy. Lot of
Yeah.
empathy.
Yeah, yeah. I will say for, someone who's newly diagnosed, I get them not wanting
Mhm.
to talk about it. I think as long as you keep that door open for them, that's the biggest part. Especially, type 1 are usually diagnosed as kids. And so half the time what's going through their minds is my entire life is over. Everything that I wanted to do, anything that I wanted to pursue is over because this thing will hold me back. And it's kind of those subtle reminders that it won't. There are plenty of people who are thriving as type 1 diabetics. And yes, they have to give themselves insulin. Yes, they might need to use gadgets like CGMs or insulin pumps, but it is no different than any other person. You just have a little bit more, care that you have to take for yourself. So if there's anything that I can do to help you, it is just keep the door open for them to recognize that it's okay to be afraid and it's okay because it sucks. None of us asked for this, but you can make it and it will be okay. And there's plenty of, great examples everywhere of people doing just that. So thank you for holding space for them because it's going to be rough, but they will eventually get to a space for that. Um, so those 2 cents, Ryan, I would love your take.
Lauren actually reminded me, I do have a student also that is diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and he is often in the nurse's office not feeling well. I don't see him as often,
Mhm.
so I don't really have as much time with him to work with it. But, um, I do have quite a few friends that have chronic illnesses. I have a friend with lupus, I have a friend also with type 1 diabetes. And I guess I would say, like, my only thing that I think I would probably utilize if I had a client coming to me would be probably mindfulness and meditation, trying to bring down those stress levels, getting in control of breath, and
Mhm.
because of that mind body connection, really trying to put those together. Um, and then I think too, depending on what it is, if a client was coming to me for that specifically for support, I might say, let's find someone together that would probably have more of a scope of practice around this that you would feel more supported by because I can listen and, like Lauren's saying, offer empathy and have that space for you. But it might be better for someone else that has a specialty in that to work with you. So that and support groups, like Lauren was saying, I think are probably all good choices. Having a social group that gets it probably makes the biggest difference, I would assume.
Yeah, yeah, and I've had other guests who are type ones, and one of their biggest pieces of advice is just find the community, find your people, find locally and across nationally, if you will. It is a very strong community, and it is a community that even like if you run out of supplies, someone will come through for you, and so I'm glad that you guys are being so forthright and saying, "Hey, let's find someone too, together to be able to give that perspective." Because it's not easy, and especially working with kids, it can be a lot. I will plug a friend for you guys. Her name is Simone. She's actually on the show as well, coming out pretty soon. But she is not only a pediatric nurse, but also a type 1 diabetic. Her handle is Diabetes Bay. And I think she'd be a great resource for you guys to just kind of pick her brain on, growing up, she was diagnosed as a teenager and went into nursing, specifically for that. So she's worked through plenty of children's hospitals and has spoken to, parents that have come in. They're like, hey, look, she's a nurse and she's a type
Mhm.
1. Like she gets it, So happy to lend any more resources to help you
Oh,
guys if
yeah,
that's something that you
please.
need.
But yeah, there's nothing like finding someone who's been through what you're going through. I mean, that's the human connection.
Yeah.
So, just echoing, with anyone who has a chronic condition is finding that support group. And we're so lucky that we have social media in that sense to find groups that are more tangible and ready at access. I've seen them on Facebook and other platforms, but it's really nice to have that community to say, you've been through something like me and look at you, or especially older adults, because, we work with teenagers. So, you know, my student's 14 and,
Hmm.
they're just like, they weren't taking great care of their health. And then this happened and they were in the hospital and I was so worried about them.
Yeah.
And then I found out this happened and I was like, wow, like
Hmm.
I saw the signs, but I didn't know because I'm not a doctor, but I saw the stress. I saw, and there could be anything that contributes
Sure.
to, a chronic illness, but it makes sense based on how they've been feeling this year. And then plus, COVID in
Mhm.
general, it's just a really hard time, but yes, appreciate resources and your voice too, which is great.
Yeah, yeah, no, happy to help. We get it. And even though I was diagnosed at 25, you know, I I cannot imagine, had I been diagnosed at 14 or, a 7 or, whatever, because it changes everything, from your relationships to how you navigate to, okay, if I live by myself, what happens if I hit a low and I just ran out of candy in the house? There's a lot of things that come with that and a lot of immediate growing up that you kind of have to do because when you're a kid and you're a teenager, you're like, my body's invincible. I can do whatever the hell I want, and so for that to have to be a focus, it can be a lot. So um definitely understand and happy to, continue to support you guys and connect you with people who can, really speak to that. um so I want to dive more into, how mental health directly affects the body. I know, Ryan, you kind of touched on like this deep connection and how it can translate. um and I'm curious to get a better understanding from you guys of when we don't take care of our mental health and when our bodies start to change, like how do we treat that? How do we align that connection to ensure that not only are we mentally, working ourselves out, but we're making sure that it's also helping our bodies as well? Because I also believe that, when you work on your mind and your spirit, it ensures that every decision that you make towards your body is in sync with that. But when it's out of alignment, how do we bring that back so that way we can ensure that we can actually listen to those signs and those cues that, hey, something's off or something's wrong? Brian, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah. So I think you can kind of start with any of those three, and you'll start to see little changes in the other two. So whether you start with the spiritual aspect, the mental health aspect, or the physical aspect, you'll start to see an improvement. When we eat better, when we exercise, when we get sunshine, when we socialize, when we drink water, all of those things, it's helping our bodies produce the right hormones that we need to feel happier, to manage our stress. If we're going to therapy, if we're utilizing our coping skills, we're going to have more of the motivation and desire to do things like eating healthier and getting out of the house. Um, and spiritually, if you're connecting to something that feels really good for you, uh, it really helps you, just same thing, just feel that energy to utilize in those other ways. So things that I use with my clients a lot is journaling is a huge one. Writing down how you're feeling, what's going on for you, um, like habit tracking, things along those lines, meditation, mindfulness. I'll bring those up a ton. I know Lauren's not a fan of using them for herself, as she might explain, but like it doesn't work for everybody, but for me, it does work. And so, because of that being my experience, I usually share that with people.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Lauren, what's your take?
So yeah, sorry, I'm like having a moment. Um, yeah, and I agree with Ryan. Yeah, the mindfulness meditation doesn't work for me because I just have so many thoughts going through my brain, which if you work on mindfulness meditation, you'll settle those thoughts. So it's kind of one of those things. But yeah, I feel like it's really important to adopt some type of routine for yourself of positive coping skills, which is what I talk about
Mm,
consistently with my students. They're probably sick of me talking about it. But that really is the best tool that therapists can guide you on, is finding positive things that make you feel good, that contribute to a healthy, mm, stress-free routine. And they can be anything, there's like the classic getting outside, going on a walk, going to the beach, stuff like that. But then it can be something like watching your favorite TV show. It doesn't always have to be so like woo woo or non-tech involved. But I feel like for me, what's helped me is developing a really great support system where I feel like I can talk with people in my life about how I'm feeling. I think without the support system, everything else doesn't matter. So for me, it's like your support system matters. Get rid of people who aren't there for you, give toxic energy. If you need more support, find those support groups.
Mm.
I run a women's group. There's over 3,000 members. My intention was started to um, get people connected, and now it's just like booming the last couple months, and people are looking for friends. So it's out there. But also just spending time with people that I love, listening to music. I mean, these are really basic things, but they all help with my stress levels. I feel like I'm just self-disclosing a lot today, but I feel really safe here. So thank you, Taylor. But I have IBS, and to
Dang,
manage
good for you.
IBS, you have to manage your stress. And I suffered with it for years. And, it was really awful. But the last year during COVID, I curbed it. And I'm like, how did that happen? Maybe because I needed to listen to my body and kind of slow down, not run around everywhere and do everything. Because that's my mentality. I'm very much like, I can't sit still. Like, I'm wasting my time if I'm taking the day off. That's just who I am. But like, clearly my body needed it. So when we listen to our bodies, that's kind of the best advice I could give, is find the support system, listen to your body, and develop a stress-free routine that helps curb any of the stress that, we experience day to day.
Yeah, yeah, no, I definitely feel that, and that I feel like 2020 was the universe's collective message of everybody just sit the fuck down. Just sit down and chill out for a second because we are constantly in this moving, evolving, type atmosphere, right? I mean, if we look at our history, none of us could sit still long enough. We had to move on to the next thing. We had to build the next thing. We had to create the next thing. And to actually take time for yourself, you discover so much. There's so much that I didn't realize that I was struggling with until I was forced to get quiet. And, obviously the goal is to not have to be forced to do that, but it's still powerful when you really can understand, like, oh, I've been struggling with this and I need to acknowledge that and I need to sit with that and I need to understand why is it that I feel this way or why does this thing from 10 years ago still bother me? And, I'm fine. I'm totally fine. As women, that's our favorite line, right? I'm totally fine. There's nothing wrong, fine, fine, fine. So I appreciate, again, your vulnerability. And I'm glad that this container is safe for you because we don't talk about it enough. I don't think I'll ever get sick of any of us talking about the stuff that we're going through and how we're able to, support our own overall wellness. So, Lauren, you already hit the nail on the head of what I was going to ask next. So, Ryan, I'm going to jump to you and ask on what are your personal ways that you've worked on your overall mental health. I know you talked about mindfulness and meditation, but just curious to know what are those kind of deeper things that have really supported you in ensuring that your mental health is top notch.
Yeah, so I would say, and I kind of said this at the beginning, the biggest thing I did for myself without even realizing I was doing it for myself was to move. I suffer from depression and anxiety. I have for a very, very long time. And it's gone in waves of being very bad and intense and me needing to be on medication to, it being mostly gone and manageable. When I left California, and I love California, it's nothing against California, but for me, like you're saying, like something was screaming at me to say, like, you need to change your environment for you to be able to get a better hold of this. So I did. I left, and as soon as I got here, I remember telling Lauren, like, my anxiety's better. my depression is better, my like blood sugar, like my blood pressure is better, like everything has gotten better just by me changing my environment. And sometimes that's what it takes for us to have a big growth in mental health or even physical health, is
Yeah.
just changing where you are, and kind of pressing the refresh button. So because of that, I've seen a huge amount of change in myself. I've noticed my ability to grow in my own mental health, to be stronger in my own mental health, um, and just my desire to take care of myself better. Now I enjoy being outside a lot more, things along those lines.
Mhm. Yeah, I really love the change your environment because even when it comes to friend circles, Lauren, you kind of touched on this too about like getting rid of people who have toxic energy. And I I'm such a people person that my my best friend says I like to collect people. And I'm like, I don't like to collect people. I'm that person, whether it's sober or not. I'm like, oh my God, let's be friends, like exchange numbers. Oh my God, it's not just a one off thing, but it truly is something where there has to be an application process because when you start allowing so many people and energies to surround you, you really don't get how much it can affect you. And for me, I don't know if you guys are empaths, but I'm very much an empath. And so it's easy for me to tune into people. And I've had to learn to control that because I would tune in so hard that it would be devastating when someone would just randomly break the connection for no reason. Um, and so that environment can really make or break how you do something because, if I'm constantly surrounded by people who are like on the go, got to move, got to build this next thing, that's what I want to do too, versus having a mixture of like, okay, somebody who's constantly grinding for their business, that's awesome. But I also have someone who really loves to play and wants to be childlike, and that's helpful too. And then someone who loves nature. And it's nice to keep a mix of that, but even when you're by yourself, change your scenery because especially after this past year, our homes have become everything. And so not being able to, see different environments is hard. I will say though, so I recently got an Oculus and that has been a wonderful escape for me. One, because it's my new workout thing, and that's what's been keeping me constant and moving my body. But even I use this app called Trip, which is a like meditation kind of app, and it's really cool because they take you through these very visual experiences, and the scenery changes. And I come out of that because I know I'm sitting in my living room, but because it's just so visual and it's illusion, it has really calmed me down in a sense of like, okay, I can get through the day now because I got to, even for a snap second, get away from my space. Um, and Ryan, I'm kind of where you're at. I'm like, it's time to change my environment. I love Austin, I really do, but I'm ready to expand and to, um, starting over feels so different, And I think our generation, we're used to that. We're used to kind of that start over process, and it can be very therapeutic to have to find new friends or not have to, but meeting new people and experiencing new places and new scenery and not the same highways and cities and things that we're involved in. So yeah, I'm all for I'm much a nomad too. I've just been a nomad around the city. I haven't jumped city lines. So okay. So I want to talk all things Dope Shit Therapy Pod because you guys have been crushing it in terms of the things that you brought up. I think my favorite one so far is when you brought up the Britney Spears documentary. I still haven't watched it, Lauren. Okay. I know I need to watch it because y'all's take on it. I'm just like, I knew we needed to leave Britney alone, but I just did not understand how deep we needed to leave Britney alone. So it is on my list. That's actually my next um I call it veg out session where I'm like, I'm doing nothing but watching last week it was weird movies, weird knockoff movies, and I watched this crazy Nicolas Cage
Oh
one
no.
where it was like this
Oh
alien
boy.
that comes to Earth every 6 years for a comet, and it was weird, y'all, but I laughed all the way through. It was great. I love watching cringe-worthy movies where it's just like, and it was 2020, so I'm like, "Nikki, you
Oh
hurting for a
yeah.
check that bad? Like, Face Off is still not making you money?
Oh
Like,
my
come
god.
on." So, I love doing that kinda stuff for, like, cheesy martial arts movies, although some of them are surprisingly really good. I'm like, I'm crying at the end. What is this? So, anyways, I love the things that you guys talk about, and I want to know, like, what are the plans for the future? And with you guys being in separate spaces, and the world starting to creep into, and okay, I think we can play nice with each other. Hopefully, what do you guys want to do with the show? Where do you want to take it? And you got any cool stuff coming up? Because I love when people have cool stuff coming up.
It's so funny you mentioned.
Okay, I guess I'll.
Oh, me? Okay. I was just gonna say it's so funny you mentioned the Britney
Right.
Spears episode that we did because that is by far the most discussed episode amongst people that have listened. I've now heard that at least like 6, 7 times from like people who've listened to the episode. I don't know if you knew this, Ryan, but it's just so funny. Like that was us just being like, you know what, we've always loved Britney Spears growing up. She was like an idol to us, and we were like, let's just like give our take on this experience of watching her documentary. So it's so interesting that people have just picked up on what we were putting down. So thank you. Um, Coming up, we have a lot of great episodes. Releasing next week, we have Case Kenny. I don't know if you've heard of Case Kenny, but he is, how would you describe him? I have such a hard time describing him, Ryan. I don't know.
So he's kind of like a positive mindset podcaster. He's been doing it for about 3 years. He's like top something on Apple Podcasts. Like he's always the top on his wellness category. But he does like these really short episodes about just things that are relatable to everybody, like, like ghosting and red flags and, most of it's usually surrounding dating and stuff, but he's done some other things as well.
Ooh.
Confidence, things like that. So yeah, our episode with him releases on Monday and we're really excited about it.
That's cool. That's cool. So, are you guys you guys are audio only. Are you guys gonna creep into the video space or do y'all do video? I've only listened to y'all on Apple Podcasts, so forgive me if I didn't check to see if
No,
y'all
we
did
do
video or
we
not.
do video, and we do a snippet every Friday of an episode release week. We do a snippet of the video from our recording. Maybe one day, I feel like, and maybe you can relate, Taylor, just like getting into the podcast space was us learning everything on our own. No one taught us anything other than like tips and tricks, obviously, from different groups. But everything we do is our own. So I think when we find maybe a little bit more time or are ready to take it to the next level, we'll definitely include more of our video. But I think focusing on the conversation is our main goal. And sometimes it's a little bit hard to do with video. So, but not opposed to it.
Yeah. Okay. Would you guys ever go into practice together? Like dope shit therapy, you know? That would be cool. I would join. I'd be like, "Yep, sign me up. Sounds like my people."
If Ryan wants to move back to California and get licensed here, we can open up a practice in San Diego, and she can specialize in I don't know. I love that we have the podcast to kind of, this is ourselves. Like if people listen to our podcast, this is truly us. Nothing is censored. This is totally us sharing what we want to
Mhm.
share, talking about what we want to talk about. So it's nice to have a space that like isn't censored by our job, if that makes sense. Even though that is our job. But there's a lot of
Yeah, yeah,
rules in therapy of things we can and cannot do, and so it's nice to just have like, this is from me. I am a therapist. We are therapists, but this isn't a therapist
mhm.
podcast. It's two women who know a thing or two about mental health, but also are our own person, and we can just talk about whatever we want to talk about, which is why we
Mhm.
did the episode on Britney Spears. It felt really cathartic to kind of share our experience of like,
Yeah, yeah.
leave this woman alone. She can't defend herself. So that's
Mhm.
my take.
Yeah,
Ryan, anything to
I,
add?
I completely agree. We really started this podcast as a way for us to have almost something for us, I guess. but we're both
Yeah.
creative people. We needed an outlet for it. When you're a therapist, you do a lot of giving. And although we are giving with this podcast too, it's in a way that we feel like we can do whatever we want.
Hmm.
So I don't know about Lauren, but I'm assuming based on our conversations that Dope Shit My Therapist Says it's our brand that we want to create and build off the side of being therapists. We don't want to combine them together. We're utilizing our degrees and our knowledge and our love of mental health to create and utilize in this brand, but we don't want to really like combine them together to be one giant thing. Like we're enjoying that separation.
Sure. Yeah. I will say, if you guys ever want to continue breaking down like crazy media mental health breakdowns, like I'm not gonna lie, the first thing that came to mind was R.
Oh God.
Kelly when he
Oh,
like lost his shit with Gail. And I'm just like, let's break this down. What kind of psychological thing you're going? I think those would be really cool because, um, you get all these takes from so many different big wig professionals, but it's nice to know like what do everyday, therapists think of like, hey, if he came into my space and we were talking about this, like here's what the breakdown was. Lauren, you hit right on the head. The Britney Spears thing was so compelling because you're always hearing it from these, higher level experts, and there are higher level experts everywhere, and it's nice to hear from those perspectives because you guys did just as much work to earn your degrees and your licenses as other people. So yeah, I don't know why R. Kelly came to mind, but I think it's hilarious, honestly. The entire whatever that is, Aaliyah was one of my favorite
Oh
artists
yeah.
too. So I'm just like, oh no, you got
On
something going on in that brain. You're being a
honestly,
15-year-old, like
Taylor, if he came into my
so
office, I'd refer him out immediately. There's just no way. There's just no way. No, I agree. I really like I haven't watched R.
I
Kelly,
bet.
but Aaliyah was just so precious and perfect, and it's just um I have been watching the Demi Lovato documentary that's on YouTube, and that one might
Yeah,
be a
that's
good
on
one
my
for
list
us, maybe
too.
Ryan, to come together and because it touches on a lot of substance usage, which is different from Britney because Britney's suffering with a lot of other issues. But Demi, I followed her since the beginning, since I was a Disney kid, and we're like the same age. So I've seen her like up and down. So
Yeah.
potentially, if Ryan's on board, we could dissect Demi.
the funny thing is, like, the whole celebrity thing is so Lauren.
Yeah.
Like, she is so good at that. She's the one who runs into celebrities. She knows all of the details. If you ask me, I have no clue. I'm like, all I know is R. Kelly did something bad. I have no clue what you're talking about, Taylor. Completely over my head. I actually never even watched the Britney Spears documentary. Like, Lauren's like, oh, watch this, watch that. And, honestly, half the time my coping skills are laying on the couch with my dog on Instagram. That's my problem, is my
Yeah.
Instagram habit. So if we do this, I'm actually gonna have to like watch the documentary this time.
You'll just have to message me and I'll watch it with you because again, that's one that I really wanna see 'cause I love Demi, and I follow her and, same Disney kid kind of thing, and I like that she was different and, that's when all of the, singing and dancing, like, movies kept coming out, and, I will say I could have gone the rest of my life without High School Musical. I'm
Oh
saying it
yeah,
right now,
sure.
no shade
Yeah.
to Zach and Vanessa and all y'all, but, 1 was enough, and y'all did 3, so, you know, I'm like, "I can't take it, make it stop," especially when South Park did their episode on it, I'm like, "No, guys, don't fall for it," but I love how they make fun of stuff, so I guess I had to let it happen, but, um, you guys, I would love to ask you one last question of, you know, if somebody is nervous about going to therapy, what's one piece of advice that you would give them about taking that first step into, working on their mental health? And Ryan, let's start with you.
I guess research, like looking at it the same way you would going to a doctor, like look up the therapist you're trying to find, understand what you really want to work on first. And that'll help guide you in picking a therapist because a lot of therapists, their profiles will say, like, oh, I focus on this, this, and this. And then that can kind of help guide you on who you're going to pick. The other thing, too, is getting therapy is not selfish. And I think a lot of people may come from that perspective when they're nervous to go to therapy, like, oh, I'm just going to be talking about myself and, blah, 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 and my friends for that. Or what are they going to think? What are they going to, judge me? And, here's someone from a therapist. I tell my clients this all the time. If they're like, I can't believe I'm saying this, I'm like, you're fine. Trust me. We have heard lots of things so far, and we're not judging you. Like we really could care less in the way of like, it's good we care less. We're just here to listen and absorb it, and we really aren't judgmental in our day to day with our work. We just really care and want to know how we can listen and be supportive. So I think if you understand that a therapist has gone into this job because we do care about humans in general, and that we're really wanting to listen and understand you, that might be a little bit more supportive.
Awesome.
Yeah, I feel like something that a lot of people are nervous about, besides obviously opening up and being vulnerable, is fear of judgment. And that's why I do think, like Ryan said, research, it's important because I feel like, yeah, if I were to have a therapist who is like in their 60s, like my mom's age, I don't know that I'd be so comfortable. So finding someone maybe who is a little bit younger, if you're younger, finding a male, if you want a male versus a female, and that's what, Psychology Today is for. A lot of therapists have profiles on there and they talk about what they specialize in. But, you can always break up with your therapist if it doesn't go the way you want it to or you don't feel heard. One of the biggest things is that I think people get turned off with therapy when their therapist is a bad match for them, and it happens because we're humans. So like sometimes
Mm.
I'll have a friend say, "Yeah, my therapist isn't hearing me right." And so I say, "Okay, give it a few sessions and talk about what you might need from them," which is really hard, but it's allowed and not talked about often. Again, if a therapist is going to get butthurt over that, they are in the wrong
Mm.
profession. And it's up to us to use our professional sense of self outside of the session to talk about our feelings, because we are allowed to get butthurt. We just can't talk about that with a client because it's totally unprofessional. But it's important for you to find the right match. And if it's not immediately, I mean, you need to give it a little bit of time. Probably, I'd say a couple months, and unless it's just god awful, then get out. But yeah, you might just need to research the type of person that you want as your therapist, who specializes in what you're looking for, but also is hearing you and giving you space. So,
Yeah, no, I think both of you make very valid points in that do your research. It's okay to find profiles and reviews just like you would when you're about to make a new purchase on something. And it's not to make, you as humans sound like products, but, the service that you're getting, you want to know that you're going to get something valuable out of it. And Lauren, I love your aspect of like, find your mirror. I don't have anything against male therapists, but you don't have the same body parts as me. So if I need to talk about some stuff, I want a female therapist who understands, the ups and downs of womanhood. Sometimes, when me and my partner did couples therapy, we specifically wanted a woman of color because she could understand some of the things that we go through from a cultural standpoint. And it can be difficult to try to explain that to somebody who's not a part of your culture. And it's not to add to any type of racial divide. It's just like right now for my sanity, I need somebody who gets it. But my therapist, she's a white lady and I love her to death. Shout out to Kelly, because she has been my favorite therapist for the last 2 years. She's a fellow Texan too. And something she just knows how to just draw stuff out of me, and I've gone leaps and bounds. She was a big, honestly, person when I was thinking about doing this. The podcast, B, quitting my job to pursue my own passions and programs outside of the podcast. She's been there for every step. So finding a good therapist is so important. And it is, I dated two therapists before I settled on Kelly. And I felt so bad. I was like, I'm cheating on them because I was trying to trial them out. Like you said, it's okay to trial them out because you don't know the vibe of somebody until you spent a little bit of time with them, just like you would a friend or, a possible partner. Because everybody puts on their best behavior at the beginning. Most therapists don't, but for yourself, you're like, do I really want to open up to this person? Do I feel comfortable with them? And so, um, but I definitely felt like a two timing whore with two therapists. Like, you are just a terrible person because both of these women are trying to help you, and you're scheming on. I didn't tell Kelly till way later because I literally felt so bad for the
That's
other
so
lady. I was like,
funny.
I just want you to know at the very beginning, I was seeing another therapist at the same time as you. I'm sorry. She's like, girl, if you don't, oh, I'm gonna end the session now if you keep going
That's so
on.
funny.
So, anyways, ladies, yeah, it's I'm dramatic. It's the theater kid in me, but y'all, this has been really informative and really awesome. And I thank you both for your time and energy and perspective on this. If people want to, keep up with the show and everything that you guys are doing, how can they find you? How can they connect with you? And yeah, if they, yeah, that's my question.
Okay, so you can find us on Instagram. Well, that's a lie. We have an Instagram, a TikTok, and Clubhouse now. So it's the same across all. It is dope, SHT Therapy Pod. And we also, what was the other question? Oh, our podcast. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio. We're supposed to be on Amazon, although it hasn't been popping up. But basically, you could find us on most podcast platforms.
Real quick, how are y'all liking
I'm
Clubhouse?
on it. I'm on
I have to go
it.
find y'all. Are y'all enjoying the
Yeah.
platform so far?
Are you on Clubhouse, Taylor? Okay, I'll
Hmm.
follow you. Because
Yeah,
I
yeah, I
was
am.
in a room yesterday. I created a room with two other women I know, and we were talking about life after the pandemic. A really good conversation. Just gotta get more people on board. Grow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll go find you guys because now it's a time suck. It's very true what they say that you will find yourselves accidentally on there for, I think my longest was 6 hours.
Whoa.
And I was only talking to one person. And we just fell into this stride. But there are a lot of great rooms, a lot of great diabetic
Oh,
rooms. So
nice.
I'm once I find you guys, I'm happy to ping you in on
Oh
those.
yeah, that'd be great.
One of my friends on there, she does like type 1 for caregivers and
Hmm.
parents. And then there's another one that we do on Mondays that's like everything but diabetes, but it's like a play on words, and it's a room full of different diabetics and others who want to be allies to listen in on things that we go through. Sometimes they change the topic on like dating or drinking, stuff like that. So I will definitely be finding you on Clubhouse because I like Clubhouse. It's just finding the shut off, step away, turn it off. It's almost worse than
Or
Instagram for me. So.
if you're in a bigger room, treating it like a podcast and cleaning and doing things like I did the other day. I was on it for like 2 hours, but I was doing other things because it was a
Hmm.
1,000 person room. So it just depends. Also on my energy level, which I think is great with Clubhouse, is that I could go, okay, I really want to talk today. Like, who's down to talk and what room can I go in that's small? And then other days I'm like, I'll just listen. And it's like 1,000 people. And I'm like, great, I don't just raise my hand. So it's nice. The options.
It is under, so our podcast Clubhouse is under my name because you have to put a name. And Lauren already had created her own personal one. So I'm not really doing much on it yet. I just haven't had the energy to figure out it and, I kind of have a lot on my plate. But we are planning on making it a thing and utilizing it. So I just made mine
Hmm.
our podcast one so we could branch off from there and do all the things. So yes, feel free to follow. And hopefully in the very near future we can actually start making some strides with it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, ladies, both for sparing the time. I know this won't be the last time that we chat, but I'm looking forward to everything that you guys are doing in the podcast space and then some. And appreciate your perspective on helping other diabetics know that therapy is 100% okay, and that you should go for it to ensure that you're getting the help that you need. So, until next time, guys, we will catch you next week. Man, can I just say, These ladies, seriously, I'm really excited to see what they do in terms with their podcast and how they're going to have such a huge impact on so many people, not only in their careers, but in their personal lives with what they're bringing with the show. So many beautiful thoughts on how we can take better care of ourselves and our mental health and ways that we can, make little changes, whether it is our support system to our environment. It really matters what we take in and who we take in terms of ensuring that our stress and our mental health is zen, right? As a diabetic, you already know our stress levels will make our blood sugar go crazy. And we need to make sure that we are armed with as many tools and resources as possible to make sure that we can keep that under control. Because, as Ryan so beautifully put it, the mind body connection is so deep. So, if our minds aren't right, our bodies won't be right either. So, Ryan, Lauren, thank you so much again for your perspective, your expertise, and your vulnerability. You guys shared so much on the things that you're going through and the things that have helped you get through them. And I'm so grateful that you chose to share that with me. So until next week, guys, you already know every Tuesday and Thursday, and I'll catch you guys next week. Bye.